Can you say hard hats, folks? Hard hats, lunch pails, steel-toe boots.
Anything short of a championship this year is a failure.
Look at this boomer right here.
You've just got so much talent here.
Somebody said we need to apologize for Jalen.
Can I quote it, John? What are we apologizing for? What did we say? What did we do?
Well, the Celtics, the Team USA defeated Brazil 122-87, and I'm here with Bobby Manning and Jack Simone, and that was probably the least exciting game that we saw today, but we did get an easy win, and USA is going to advance to the semifinals against Serbia. So let's get into it. Everybody's good. Bobby, can we hear you?
Yep, you got me.
Okay, cool. So I thought maybe I'll start off just asking you guys both what you thought about that game, just general takeaways. I thought that we probably couldn't take too much away from USA's game. Just I feel like there was a clear mismatch in the sense that they were able to outplay them really in every single way. Very different from the first three semifinals games we watched today. So maybe Jack, I'll start with you. Just general thoughts on what we saw.
I mean, this is kind of what you want to see from Team USA. I mean, I remember talking to some of my friends during the exhibition games, and it was the classic, oh my gosh, are they finally weak this year? And then it's like they start the real games and they blow everybody out like it is. Team Brazil was probably one of the weaker teams in the quarterfinals. They had the fewest NBA talent. I mean, you had Bruno Caboclo, who is clearly finally 2 years away from being 2 years away, dropped 30 points. And he was the only player who could do anything for Brazil in this game. And after that, outside of that, it was just Team USA with a scoring onslaught of LeBron James getting wherever he wanted, Kevin Durant obviously breaking the all-time record for men's and women's in USA basketball history. Anthony Edwards decided to do Anthony Edwards things at the end of the game. Like, it was just very clear that the talent gap was too big for Brazil to overcome. And you saw Team USA sort of just dominate them in every facet of the game, including shooting nearly 60% from the field. It was an unfair matchup. And as soon as you see Team USA show even the slightest effort on defense too, you're like, all right, this game's pretty over.
Yeah, when I saw how it was going, when I saw the flow of the game and how Brazil looked, I thought it was going to be 40-50 point win, and it got there by the end of it. I also should give Brazil a little credit for hanging in there the way they did. Decent effort all around. You mentioned Caboclo, Jack. He continues to look good in these settings, and there's a number of guys in these tournaments that fell out of the NBA who look like, oh, maybe they could break back in, but decent effort from them. I feel like U.S. is starting to come together in a way that every passing game I watch them makes me more confident that they're going to get it done here. It doesn't look like there's a team in the field that can contend with them that's looked on their level. I think that continued to be the case. Canada obviously lost today. France didn't look on the level of a team that can score 100, 110, 120 points like the U.S. can here. And you saw Holiday getting involved again, White in the mix, and then Tatum in the game. So all three Celtics players get in there ultimately for the U.S. here. And it wasn't the greatest Tatum game again. Thought White was effective at times for assists. Holiday doing what Holiday does, making shots and getting involved in the passing game. No turnovers for him. So you at least saw all three guys out there, Noah, which is what I think all Celtics fans want to see out of these games more than anything else.
Yeah, definitely. I echo what you guys kind of both took away, in that I think Canada being out of the mix here is kind of the biggest news of the day, because a lot of us expected maybe for it to be USA-Canada, in the gold medal game, or at least Canada was seeming to be one of the more formidable teams. So certainly didn't see that coming, but they're gone now, and now I think you have to kind of reassess the field. You have France, Germany, and Serbia as the three other potential medal contenders there. But yeah, I think that in this game, you just saw just talent win out. And that's kind of been the case throughout this Olympic run for USA. And that, even when certain guys have been struggling, I don't think every single player has maximized their potential on this team. They just have more than enough, or as long as several have, you're in good shape. So agree with you that I think even Brazil just hanging in there was impressive in its own right. And even just looking at the rosters, I got an NBA notification. It was LeBron James and Kevin Durant take on Guy Santos, and I was thinking like that kind of captures what the disparity is from a talent standpoint between these two.
I would have gone Bruno, Jack.
Yeah, what Guy Santos do to you? What is that? He's just
no, I'm not nothing against him, but it's just normally they're headlining all these games with like Jokic takes on SGA, and it just kind of this is the only team in the field that really
I agree.
a slew of like NBA players. But But yeah, I think otherwise, like the team has just seemed more connected as the games have gone on. I'm just thinking back to the exhibition games. I mean, we were watching them like fumble passes. Players were passing to people who didn't really weren't in the right spots. Or now you're not seeing those lapses anymore, which obviously you don't want those going into the medal games or just any single elimination game. You know, the margin of error is so much thinner. But who really stood out to you guys just from the field before we go into like the actual Celtics performances?
I mean, LeBron seems like a cop-out answer, but LeBron was really good. Like he's been the entire run for them. Um, Derek White did Derek White things. I mean, it really just felt like an all-around game. Devin Booker stood out just because he made his threes, and that's kind of probably why he's playing over Tatum, and why a lot of these guys are playing over Tatum because Tatum just hasn't been able to shoot the ball right for the past however many months. So he's not as equipped to be that level of role player. I mean, his rebounding has been great throughout the whole run. His defense, I mean, you saw him checking the game and immediately shut down Brazil. So like he's providing value, but if the shot's not there, it really doesn't isn't as conducive to a free flowing offense. Anthony Edwards obviously had his scoring punch at the end of the game. But I mean, it's LeBron. Like LeBron has just been taking over. He does whatever he wants, whatever he wants. He had 12 points and 9 assists in this game. It just feels like he can do no wrong when he's on the court, and it's like it feels like we're watching LeBron from 2016. It just dominate everybody because he's just getting wherever he wants on the floor. So it's fun to watch. It's wild that he's almost 40 years old, and I think if and when the USA manages to win gold, he'll be the MVP of the tournament because he's been unstoppable.
Yeah, doing some flashy stuff too. He's trying to go behind the back at different times. The transition bursts have been fun to watch, and the power he continues to play with inside is probably the most fun thing to watch about this team so far. And everybody, now that we've watched like 8, 9 games or so here of this team, seems to be settling into their role, at least giving the kind of performances night in, night out you start to expect from them. Obviously, you mentioned everything LeBron does with the ball in his hands, Jack. Booker has to be like 75% from three at this point, given the output he has here. I think he came into this at 71. Holiday, shooting efficient, passing, defending. Curry's been one of the more disappointing ones in terms of his output, but you'll take what he gave you tonight alongside all the other performances. And then it's Durant coming off the bench and Bam shooting like 50%. Davis giving you double contributions. Edwards giving you the double figure scoring. And then you get deeper into the, Halliburton shooting and White passing. So it feels like they're figuring out ways to get everybody involved here. And here we go again, Noah. The one guy you look at and you're like, how can he figure out his place? And this is Tatum. And he didn't play to start the game, right? For a little stretch there, and then they got him in toward like the later portion of the second half there, and he had some opportunities. There was like a bunny missed around the rim, no 3-point attempts again, as you see here, but he's trying to find those in between opportunities, Jack. And when he's getting them, he's not converting them, and he's not getting many of them, which is the killer. A lot of the stuff Noah and I have talked on the show here is about a lack of rhythm for him, and especially with his so limited 3-point opportunities. That's the killer for him right now.
Yeah, Jack, we've talked a lot about this on the Garden Report, just around Tatum's performance. Is it cause for concern? Is it cause for concern for Team USA, but also is it cause for concern for the Celtics, for Celtics fans that are watching him play right now, and specifically the shooting, obviously. What's your take on that?
I don't think I'm concerned. I think he's obviously been cold for a long time at this point. He definitely isn't the scorer he was. And I think the biggest reason that he's not as effective on Team USA is because he's not playing the same role he's playing in Boston. Like on the Celtics, Tatum is so effective because he gets the ball, he can run the offense in the half court and just find whatever pass he needs to. He draws so much attention, and regardless of if he's having a cold night or a hot night, like you look at all the stats throughout the season, when Tatum takes threes, the Celtics win. When he doesn't take threes, they lose. And it doesn't matter if he makes them. If he's taking threes because he's spacing the floor, I don't know the exact ins and out, but Tatum taking more threes equals winning based on everything you look at for the entire season for Tatum. And he's just not able to play in that same role with Team USA because you've got LeBron, you've got KD, you've got all these guys who are getting the ball ahead of him, which is fine because it's LeBron and Kevin Durant. Like you're not going to sit there and complain about Tatum not getting the ball. But when you're asking him to play such a different role than the one he's played for his entire professional career at this point, you can imagine it'd be a little awkward. And then when you add on top of that, the fact that he's been so cold from three, been so cold scoring the ball, hasn't been very efficient throughout the playoffs, it's just not going to equal, 50% shooting or exactly what you want to see. He's still providing the rebounding. I think coming into this game, he was like their leading rebounder. He's still passing all right. He's still playing good defense. So he's doing everything else. He cuts off the ball fine. It's just the scoring's not there, and that's kind of what everybody likes to look like with Jason Tatum, even after we spent his entire career saying be more than just a scorer. That's kind of now where all the attention goes anyways. It is what it is. I'm not worried because I think at the end of the day, once you get back to Boston, you're still going to have the same elite team. You're still going to like we just saw them go, what was it, 16-3 in the playoffs with Tatum being inefficient. I'm not too worried about Tatum in general, but it's just he's not very efficient right now.
Yeah, I think that's kind of it. Like it's it's a little bit beyond a slump in a way, just because it's extended for so long. So it's more of a question of like, is this something that he will break out of? I mean, obviously, I think like these kinds of games, like he's not going to ever be 1 for 5 because he's not going to just take 5 shots. And something that I've been thinking a lot about is how he usually like struggles in the first quarter. Like how many times have we seen him start like 0 for 4 from the field, and then to come back, he has to kind of work his way into the game. And with just USA, you just don't have the ability to do that. And you mentioned Devin Booker, but I think he's the guy that's like surprised me the most in this Olympic run, just because I feel like he's filled his role perfectly. And they said on the broadcast today that Steve Kerr said he was like the most adaptable player on the team, which is exactly like what you want to be. It's the kind of the biggest compliment you could get on this roster. And Tatum is somebody that I would have thought would receive that kind of compliment just because of the role that he was playing for the Celtics and just the way that he was able to kind of adapt to different moments, different things that were needed of him. But yeah, I think at this point, like I don't see him breaking out of this slump in the Olympics. Like it feels like every shot that he takes feels awkward. He's overthinking it. It seems like, yeah, some of the moves like on paper seem normal, but then just the way that he's processing them seems off.
Yeah, and we were joking around, obviously, on one of the shows, Noah, about him joining the Stay Ready crew in his own way here. He's also adapting to a Neesmith role in many ways too, right? Like 2 shots, making the difference between whether he has a good scoring night and a bad scoring night. In this case, 5 in this game, sometimes 1 or 2 threes. So it's not many opportunities. It's not a big sample size for him to be able to find rhythm, get consistent, make multiple shots. The wonder is that he hasn't been able to get going in one of these games, hit a 3 or 2. I guess the Puerto Rico one you can look at now and say that was his big game, but it's 10 points. So you're waiting for that opportunity, you're looking for that opportunity, but back to something Jack said earlier, the ball's in LeBron's hands. Durant's a guy you're spacing the floor with. Bam, Davis, Embiid, all those guys are playing in the middle of the floor. So honestly, the only way Tatum, I think, can get going is by embracing the mid-range area because the paint's clogged, the three-point area is covered with Booker, Durant, and others, so he's not getting attempts from there. He doesn't have the ball in his hands. So that mid-post area, can he get a touch there and hit one of those turnarounds? But unfortunately, that hasn't been a super efficient shot for him either, going back a little while now. So he almost has to go back in the lab a little bit, Jack, after this run here. Again, is there a reason for concern? No. But the slump is so extended now that you do have to go back after this Olympic run here and tinker with some stuff, I would think, just to find where that scoring sweet spot is going to be going into next year. And obviously, he's going to take a lot of threes. Obviously, he's going to continue to live and work around the paint area. But is there an in-between game, a floater game he can unlock a little bit just to give him an outlet in a game like this? Right now, he just doesn't have it.
I almost wonder if we'll see next year. This is something Tyler Rucker of No Ceilings, who's a draft guy who we had on our show, brought up to us because he's from the area. He's a Celtics guy. He was wondering whether or not the stress of winning a championship being lifted off his back will translate to a more free playing Tatum next year. And the reason you're probably not seeing it now is because this is just so far removed from the role he gets to play in Boston and the role he's used to. But like, it felt like at times last year, especially earlier in the season or for stretches of the season, we'd see Tatum take these pull-up shots you don't like. You'll see him, pressing a little too hard. And throughout his career, like that's been one of the biggest things with Tatum. And then the playoffs, he settled down and it went down and he didn't do it as much. But you almost wonder if Tatum next year is like, all right, I have nothing left to prove. I can just play my game. And he sort of plays the style of basketball he played in the playoffs all year. Like I'm just going to pass. I'm just going to make the right play. I'm not going to worry about my shot. I'm not going to take as many of these step back threes. Like you're still going to take them. You're still going to see him take those threes. And for as much as people dislike the step back threes, Tatum's not going to stop taking them just because they didn't fall, or they haven't been falling. But I don't know. It's I don't want to say worrisome that he hasn't been scoring right for the past few months. It's obviously not ideal considering that's why he was, rose into this all-star player, but he brings so much more to the floor that teams are going to throw pressure at him regardless, and that's what makes him so effective. So I don't think concerned is a fair word right now.
Well, the months is the concerning word.
The length
And
of it is not
yeah,
ideal for sure. That's the part that's a little eyebrow raising.
yeah,
part
and it's tough to figure out.
of what I'm always thinking though is like how much of it is a technical challenge. Like I think there's always going to be speculations about him building muscle and if did that slow him down. But I would probably say most of this can be attributed to his confidence. And I feel like so many players have talked about this, but when they know that their coach believes in them and their coaches want them to shoot, and like what that does for their confidence. And I feel like Derek White is a perfect example of somebody who, I'm sure, obviously made technical adjustments to his shot, but also just got confidence from the environment that he was in Boston. I feel like since it was not that he was looking great before the DNP, but he's looked particularly kind of like slow processing since the DNP. And I wonder how much of that is just like he didn't have the confidence of the coaching staff to play in that game. Probably the first time in his entire career that he's felt like a coach didn't want to play him because he actually was the odd man out from a rotational standpoint. How much of it do you think is like maybe just a confidence thing coming off of this weird dynamic on Team USA that he's never experienced before, where he no longer has the green light to just like go and dominate or go and be aggressive and take shots because we want you to, because actually now he's like that's not really his spot on the totem pole here. Whereas maybe Anthony Edwards is getting a different message, or Devin Booker is getting a different message of like take every open three you get. I don't know if Tatum necessarily has that message right now based on his output.
He's definitely more willing to be differential, and I think that plays into it. I think that's the reason he gets benched in this situation to start is because Kerr knows he can handle it, and he did. Obviously, wasn't thrilled with it. Obviously, from the comments we saw, but he was able to handle it. Some other guys might not have been able to handle it as much. And I think in terms of his role, he's more willing to be differential and more able to be differential than other players. I loved his assist tonight. A really good pass. I think he's had great passes throughout this run here, and he is capable of playing a more complementary style. So that's where he gets pigeonholed on this roster a little bit, and he'll be in a more frontline position in 2028. It's weird that he's in this spot now coming off the championship, but I do think a lot of it boils down to just his role. But to your confidence point, Noah, the confidence comes in. Can you take advantage of this situation where you lined up one-on-one? Can you find an opportunity to be aggressive in transition and finish strong in those spots? Because you're not going to have many. So the ones you do have, the ones that pop up, you have to seize them. And that probably is what you would look at right now, Jack, and criticize the most is that when those situations come, when he's at a point blank position, when he's one-on-one with a guy, you have to take full advantage of that. And he hasn't done that consistently during this run.
Yeah, I mean, even the couple times he got the ball, obviously he missed that midi, and then there was another time he got the ball and sort of dribbled into himself, and he just doesn't look comfortable right now. And I think a big part of it is somebody mentioned in the chat Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is given the freedom at the end of games to just do whatever he
Right.
wants. Tatum doesn't have that freedom, like that for whatever it is, whether it is Anthony Edwards saying, "All right, I'm going to go do this right now," it's fine. Like everyone praises
I think
that.
that's what it is.
And that's fine. Like Anthony Edwards can play like that, but that's never been Tatum and it never will be Tatum. And realistically, as much as that means he's not going to be a dominant force or good on this team USA, what the Celtics need, like they don't need Tatum to be this alpha Anthony Edwards, Kobe Bryant, I'm going to take every shot like it's Jason Tatum time. They need him to be the willing to pass up good shots or great shots, that guy. They need him to be the, like the chat saying, slightly passive guy so he can wait for those open shots to develop for other guys. Because like the Celtics have built a winning championship team because Jason Tatum is not that type of player. And you can win with that type of player, but that's not what the Celtics need. And in this setting for Team USA, that's the reason you've been able to see that Anthony Edwards thrive in the way he did. And the Devin Booker argument is he's just a better shooter than Jason Tatum is, point blank. Like that, it just is, and that's fine. But Jason Tatum is so used to having the ball in his hand, so used to being an on-ball guy that when you put him in a role where he's not able to do that, and like Noah mentioned, like there's no space for him to really spot up from three because that's roles designed for other players. He's sort of just left in this awkward middle space role where he's either looking for those middies, looking for post ups, or just working off cuts. And he's done a good job working off cuts, getting rebounds and stuff like that. But you're just not seeing him get the same chances to say it's Jason Tatum time as you've seen for Anthony Edwards, and that results in Anthony Edwards. Like realistically, Anthony Edwards had 17 points in this game. 12 of them were when the game was over, so that's fine, and you can look at that, and that's like not a diss at Anthony Edwards, but that's just sort of the role they've each carved out for themselves, and it is what it is. It's just Tatum is a more passive player, and that's what works in Boston for the Celtics, and what's helped them win a championship. It's not what's going to get him the popping stats on Team USA in the Olympics.
I do want to say real quick before you go, Noah, I am in Paris. I am not at the game right now, but I will have a little bit of coverage here of the championship week here. So just want to check in quick from here. I'm going to leave the rest of the show to you guys. I think Joe Sway might pop in at some point here, but we'll see what happens with Tatum the rest of the way. I think he's going to find a rhythm in one of these games. And do they need him to? Probably not, as Jack has mentioned there, but it'd be great to see from a Celtics fan perspective, especially if you want to flex, that being your guy and that being a guy that can show out on the stage. Real quick, also before I go, Serbia, impressive comeback today. I don't know if they can contend with the U.S. Based off the matchups we've seen so far. It's been pretty dominant in the U.S.'s favor, but Jokic, a lot of heavy lifting during that comeback. Australia, I would have been interested to see because they just play so well together. So I was kind of bummed they lost. But you do get one more Jokic versus Embiid thing. And Embiid turned it around today. So that's all I got on this one. Great talking to you guys. Thanks for filling in here. It is, almost midnight here in Paris. So I'm going to get to bed. We got track and field in the morning. And I'll probably be on Thursday to talk about the semifinals.
Were you at the game, Bobby?
I was not tonight, no.
Well, enjoy.
Have fun.
All right, guys.
Enjoy Paris.
Thank you.
So I don't want to talk too much about Tatum because I feel like the whole topic, his whole topic of just him and his struggles have been a little beaten to the ground by just media in general, especially because I feel like there hasn't been any conflict or like really any major hiccups with this team, minus like the South Sudan game, which was still a win, but I feel like that kind of rattled people in exhibition play. Just Drew Holiday and Derek White, I thought both of them have just been so impressive throughout this run. Drew Holiday, 9 points, 4 of 7 shooting, 3 assists, 2 blocks in 17 minutes. Everyone's stats are so deflated because of the limited minutes. So I just quickly looked and realized like Devin Booker's 18 points came in 15 minutes. Like that's pretty wild. That probably would have been a 40-point game if he was in the NBA, And then Derek White, 5 points. Didn't do anything crazy today. I feel like his shot these last 2 games, he's missed like a few, whereas for his first few games, I feel like he literally didn't miss for a few days.
He was unconscious.
When he first got, it was kind of wild. I feel like he just was riding the high of being with Team USA. But anything surprised you about those 2 guys? I mean, I feel like they're pretty much doing exactly what we saw from them on the Celtics. Just now they're doing it on an international scale. Maybe they're surprising some people that weren't closely watching Celtics games and maybe didn't realize just how invaluable Drew and Derek both are.
Yeah, I mean, they're just so good at doing whatever the team needs them to do and so willing to do that it's kind of just a seamless fit on Team USA. Playing solid defense, bringing the ball up when they need to, acting as a connector within the flow of the offense, attacking the glass, especially for Derek White in particular. He's been great, sort of just seaming his way and sneaking his way into defenses to grab offensive or defensive rebounds. The playmaking has been good, and it's not all like, oh, I'm going to dribble a million times and then find a guy. It's I'm going to get the ball and pass it quick and create an open look for somebody else. Like you mentioned, Derek White didn't hit his threes in this one like we've been used to seeing through the rest of the Olympic games so far, but just it's the same thing you can say after every game for Drew Holiday and Derek White. They are perfect role players, and they are such good role players that they have been elevated into all-star caliber players. And it's like them, Aaron Gordon, have like elevated out of this role player status into stars, and that's the reason why they're able to be on this Team USA team and fit in so seamlessly, playing legitimate minutes. Like Drew Holiday and Derek White played the same number of minutes as Steph Curry, played more than Devin Booker, who was red hot, played the same as LeBron James, more than Embiid. And I know it was a blowout, so different guys get different minutes at different times, but like they just fit in so perfectly with everybody else on the floor, regardless of who's on the floor, that it's the same thing every game, and it's perfect.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like those two guys have had the smallest adjustment period. I've talked about this quite a bit, but like they're literally playing the exact same role, and then LeBron's playing a pretty similar role because everything's still running through him. And there's a couple players like Durant. I think he's coming in, he's looking for a shot. But the guys that have struggled the most seem to be those in between guys, minus Devin Booker, who I feel like has just perfectly become a role player. It's kind of fascinating to watch. Like I was watching him diving on the floor last game, like just doing role player things, like just finding ways to make himself valuable. What do you make of Steph Curry? I feel like he's the one guy that has been struggling. That obviously he's gotten a lot of attention for it, but he just hasn't had like a quintessential game where he just goes off the way that maybe people have become accustomed to. Do you feel like that's just a shooting slump, or is it like a physicality thing a little bit? Because this is a different brand of basketball that he's
Yeah.
less familiar with.
I think it's just everybody else around the Olympics is like, that's Steph Curry. I'm not going to leave Steph Curry. And so he's just not getting
Yeah,
any
yeah.
open shots. And that's realistically, Stephen Curry does so much more than just shoot the ball, but in such a watered down version of team like this, where everybody can do everything and everyone's a star and there's limited minutes, Stephen Curry's role is to shoot the basketball. Like that is what he does here. He's like, as much as he's an elite playmaker in the NBA, he's great at driving and finishing. He's just great at moving off the ball. In this particular spot where LeBron has the ball in his hands, KD has the ball in his hands, and Embiid has the ball in his hands a lot, Steph's job is to shoot the ball. And when teams and players are so focused on not letting him do that, it's not as easy. And he hasn't been, at all in a rhythm from three so far. And so I think you haven't been able to see the impact. And realistically, if he's not shooting the ball or not letting him shoot the ball, probably shouldn't be playing as much because there's not really much else he brings to the floor. I'd rather have Derek White or Drew Holiday out there for defense. I'd rather have a Devin Booker out there right now for shooting, as crazy as that sounds, because he's just been hotter. You can't not play Steph Curry. You have to keep starting him because there's always the chance that he makes 2 threes and then you're going to see 10 threes in a game from Steph Curry. And so you've got to trust the greatest shooter of all time. And if you want to call it nepotism, Steve Kerr's the coach. He's not going to bench Steph Curry.
I know he's definitely not
he's
going
just,
to.
but he just doesn't have it from 3 right now, and it's fine. But that's kind of his only job on this specific team. And so if he doesn't have that, he's just not going to do much else out there.
Well, that's kind of the thing. I feel like people are trying to make a lot of judgments on these players based off of the Olympic play. And I feel like Steph Curry kind of serves as an example of why it's really hard to make a judgment on a player's career or stature or like ability based off of this relatively limited pool where you're playing limited games, but also limited minutes and having limited touches. Like Steph Curry, for all the struggles, he was over 1 from 3 today, so it's not like he's shooting himself back into out of a slump. But yeah, has been kind of fascinating to watch that he's been someone that definitely like has not had a breakthrough game. And I still think it's coming. I still feel like he's going to have a big game. I mean, he doesn't have that many more opportunities. How many games are left? Say 2 more games, right? So it's
2 more
not
games,
in theory, if they win. But I have the gold medal game on my calendar already, so I'm assuming it's going to happen. But yeah, I think right now it's looking like he might not have that quintessential Steph Curry game, whereas everybody else seems to have found their flow a little bit more outside of him and really Jason Tatum. They're the only 2 guys at this point that have been struggling. And I do feel like the offense has become more connected. Like it's less ISO, whereas early on it felt like a connected thing, but it's really running through LeBron. So it's kind of tough for other guys that have served that role to find their spot of like being the hub. Like that's kind of been the challenge. The guys that are the hub but are not necessarily the scorers are the ones that have felt like have fallen out. I mean, Steph Curry's a scorer, but he's also like the hub on the Warriors team and has just not been that in this group. But Jamal Murray is another one. I don't know how much you've seen Jamal Murray. Have you watched a lot of Canada or seen just?
I haven't gotten the
Jamal
chance
Murray's
to watch as much, but I've been like following a little bit. Yeah.
You've seen the storylines though. It's pretty wild. Like, he is another example of a guy like who doesn't look like he's confident. Like he's passing up open shots and then taking more difficult ones. And he's been shooting like terrible numbers throughout this run. And obviously now Canada's Olympic run is over. And so I think it'd be funny if like the beginning of next season, Tatum and Jamal Murray are both like unconscious and like just really good. And this Olympic thing is a blip, or maybe it's the reverse. Maybe the stuff carries over. I don't know. I feel like it has to carry over a little bit. Obviously, he's going to be riding the high of the championship, but in the same way, like this is something. This is something that he's experiencing.
Yeah, it's just so weird because I feel like it's an underrated thing just to be completely put in a different role you're used to playing.
Yeah.
Like for Tatum, even if he's starting, I barely have the ball in my hands, which is something that Tatum has probably never not had the ball in his hands. ever in his entire basketball career. Like you think of all, like the closest thing you've gotten is probably his rookie season, and even then, Gordon Hayward got hurt, Kyrie got hurt. He had the ball in his hands a lot. Like middle school, Tatum was definitely the best player in his team. High school, Tatum was definitely the best player in his
Right.
team. College, Tatum was still the best player. Like you're putting, and even on Team USA's run last time, he was the second leading scorer behind Durant. He was able to get in these positions to score the ball, and now he's just not. And so I think that's the thing. And the same thing with Jamal Murray. Like he's coming off the bench now. It's not something he's had to deal with in a long time, right? He's playing second fiddle to Shea even when they're in the game together. And so I think when you put these players in a spot where they're just so unbelievably out of rhythm, and obviously this doesn't account for Tatum slump in the playoffs. Like Tatum has just been slumping for the past few months, which is a concern in terms of the length of it. But when you put players in such different positions than they're used to playing in, like even look at Steph Curry. Like Steph Curry is getting all these off-ball shots, sure, but he's also barely touching the ball the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And so it's just got to be awkward and a little off-putting to play in that role. And you're probably not as much in a flow. Like all the talk for Anthony Edwards, when Anthony Edwards is given the chance to score, he's playing the exact same role he plays in Minnesota. Just give him the ball and move out of the way. And so maybe that's why he's a little bit more comfortable. But I don't know. It's just, I think it's just a product of they're just so out of rhythm. Then maybe that's a part of it, but
And they both were coming off of playoff runs where they were somewhat inefficient. Like Jamal Murray, I mean, he had the two
yeah,
game winners, so I feel like that's kind of the thing that I remember the most from his playoff run. But statistically, he wasn't shooting great, and neither was Tatum. And so that's why it's interesting because it's like it's hard to know which of the two things it is. Is it the role, or is it like some leftover shooting struggles plus the role, which makes you less confident to be that guy? Like Anthony Edwards, feel like whether it's his personality or whether it's his playoff run, like he came in knowing that he's not going to adjust his game. And maybe if Tatum had come off a playoff run where he was shooting 50% from the field and dominating offensively the way that we've seen him at points in his career, then maybe he would have been more assertive heading into Olympic exhibition games. Or maybe it's something else. We really don't know.
yeah.
I think ultimately though, like I've been watching so much Olympic just in general, just all the different sports, gymnastics, swim. I'm learning sports I've never seen before, kayaking. Like I'm really getting into it. But I think that with basketball, because it's so slow, like there's the exhibition games and there's the pool play games. Then just now the single elimination games are starting. Like you do kind of lose sight of the fact that all that matters is them winning. And it starts to become like a game for ranking NBA players against one another, and is Embiid a fraud? And it becomes like a little distracted from what the actual narrative should be. And I think the big takeaway from today's game is that this team seems just as poised to win the gold medal as they did a few months ago when the roster was assembled. Like, I don't have any real reason to think that anybody's going to be able to beat USA. I don't think Serbia is going to do it. I do think Germany, just like the fact that they're so, they're so cohesive. They have this gold medal under their belt from the World Cup. Like, they do stand out to me quite a bit. But I still don't see how they match up against USA in a full game. Do you see any team that is like, which team in the field right now stands out to you as like the biggest threat to a gold medal?
It would have to be Germany or France just because they have the NBA talent. But I don't think either of them could step to this USA team. Like, if I had to pick one, neither of them. Like, neither of them are going to beat Team USA in a game.
Okay,
like,
you wake up in a month and Team USA did not win the gold medal. What happened?
Who would I have to guess? France.
Yeah.
I'd guess France beat them because they're the only team that has legitimate size to stay inside. I don't think they're going to get to the rim as easy with Rudy Gobert. And if Team USA were to lose to France, I think they would have just had a really cold 3-point shooting game because I think Rudy Gobert and Wembanyama can pack the paint a little bit, take away some of those easy shots at the very least. And then it's just a matter of will Derek White, Steph Curry, Devin Booker make the threes that they need to win, Kevin Durant, et cetera, et cetera. So if they have a really cold game offensively and can't get to the rim as easy, and then they like France mucks it up into like an 85, 87 game, that's really the only world that I can see USA losing. But I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. And also, someone here had a comment that's interesting. I completely forgot about this, but the reason that Tatum didn't play against Serbia was because of the matchup in theory. And now they're going to play Serbia again. So do we think that Tatum's going to be in the rotation? I don't think he's going to be a DNP. I feel like all the hype around that
Kerr's
makes
scared.
Kerr probably regret that
He's
decision
scared.
just from a media standpoint, and like the number of former NBA players that came out to like admonish him, including his own player Draymond Green. Did you see that Draymond Green went on his podcast?
That was
and
insane.
Like, ripping Steve Kerr for
That was crazy.
sitting Jason Tatum. So I don't know. I think he's going to play, but I would imagine he plays like more limited minutes, which is maybe why he's been playing more in these last few games. Like I think Steve Kerr is kind of managing egos and trying to even things out as much as he can overall.
Mm-hmm. I just think it's funny that after the first game, like Kerr's definitive statement, when you can't play more than 10 guys in a 40-minute game, and then he's just doing that now. And that never made sense to me in the first place. Like you can absolutely play 12
And
guys
on the
in a
women's
40-minute
side, they're absolutely playing 12 players.
yeah, it's crazy. I think Tatum plays. I don't know how much he plays. He might get the Halliburton treatment of the blow him out and play at the end, but I don't think we'll see another game in the Olympics unless someone's hurt where nobody plays. Where one person doesn't play at all. I think that's over. And I think it was dumb in the first place, but whatever.
I think it was dumb just because of all the angst that it created, and it was obviously going to. But I was still surprised to see how many former and current NBA players like came out and criticized that and pointed to his accolades as a reason why he should have played. Just because I don't think that's like a good argument to playing someone, just what they've accomplished. Like I feel like you have to think about fit, but clearly all the NBA players that have spoken out about it, and there was a long list, they were kind of all united on this. I don't know if it's like a loyalty to him thing or if it's just their basketball opinion is that once you've accomplished what he's accomplished, like you can't beat him.
I feel like it's a respect thing, at least in their minds. Like this guy just had the best season of his career. He's clearly one of the best players in the world right now. I mean, I think he's the best American player in the world, but it's just he's just not the guy, and it's tough to switch roles like that. Like after you played so long with the Celtics, like the way that he did versus what he's going to play for Team USA here.
Yeah, definitely. So quick break here. So Game Time is actually my favorite app that I use outside of like maybe Uber is the other one I use quite a bit since I don't drive, since I know you're going to say that. But yeah, Game Time, I think if you want to use the code CLNS for $20 off, all you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS. It gives you the opportunity to buy tickets to literally anything. You can get tickets to concerts, sporting events, MLB games. There's an official partnership with the MLB. Last minute deals, like flash deals, all in pricing. You can get seat views. You can actually get the ticket and see exactly what the view is going to look like from that seat. So I love going to sporting events. It's kind of like my favorite thing in the world to do. Don't have to use Game Time for NBA games anymore, though. That's how I bought tickets to all the games that I went to prior to becoming a reporter. I'm like 0 for 10 actually on watching Celtics lose for Game Time games. But yeah, $20 off if you use code CLNS. So download the Game Time app and create an account. And you can use code CLNS for $20 off for your first purchase. Terms apply.
All righty.
One more here.
One more for you. My turn. I get to tell you about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch all of the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become a part of the PrizePicks community today. You can win up to 100 times your money. I'm going to say that again, 100 times your money on PrizePicks. With as little as 4 correct picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000. Get in on the excitement and win up to 100x your cash with the summer games on PrizePicks. If you are a fan of Sam and I's pregame show over on How About Them Celtics, you know we use PrizePicks throughout the entirety of the season and the entire playoffs. We'd pick more or less on Celtics players, on opposing players, although we usually pick the less on opposing players. Kyrie less than points was really, really good for us in the finals. So that always hit, even though we personally weren't the best at PrizePicks. But make sure to download PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS for your first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's code CLNS on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Yours is a lot better than mine. I gotta practice. I'm new to the ad game.
I'm a pro. What can I say?
I can tell. Second, I'm also new to the running the
StreamYard game.
Yeah, I guess I'm really not that new to it, but you would think that I am. It takes me like 2 years to learn an application, so I got good at Zoom like when the pandemic was over. So Jack, we've been talking quite a bit about just like who our ideal matchups would be, because I think that there have been so much discourse around like who should be on the court and Tatum should be out there, and I feel like a lot of it is like Celtics fans be wanting to see their guy out there. But to you in a close game, and obviously like barring, depends on who's been hot and exactly what the matchup is, but who are the 5 guys that you would put out there that you feel like this is the group that
right now
to be the most? Yeah, right now. Right now I'm telling you, like, it's a close game, 4 minutes left against Serbia. Like who are there certain guys you think are like non-negotiable or for sure out there?
I would
We've
put
been
out
debating this.
LeBron. It gets tough. LeBron, KD, Devin Booker. I think all need to be on the floor because Devin Booker's been that hot. I think KD's been that hot, and LeBron is LeBron. And then at that point, I think it depends. I think it depends on the matchup because I would play two of Bam, Anthony Davis, and Derek White. I'd play two of those three. If you're playing a bigger team, if you're playing France, I'd probably play Bam and AD to match up with those guys. If you're playing Serbia, where it's Jokic, a bunch of smaller guys, I'd probably play like AD and Derek White. And if you're playing like, why am I blanking on the last team? Germany, where it's again probably a couple guards, I'd probably play. And honestly, like a Mo Wagner, more athletic center, I might play Bam and Derek White. So I'd play LeBron, Booker, KD, and then two of those three guys, depending on the matchup. But I think those six have pretty much, in my opinion, been the better guys. You could throw in a Drew Holiday instead of a Derek White. You could throw in an Ant if you really wanted to. But if you have LeBron and KD, I don't think Ant should be on the floor because he's such a ball dominant guy that's kind of the same reason Tatum's not playing the same role. He's just more passive. So that's sort of what I would throw out there. What about you? What is your answer, Ben?
Yeah, mine's evolved a little, but I think you have to have LeBron. I've loved watching AD on this team. Like I actually think he's a little bit empowered by the FIBA rules. Plus maybe just this new environment, being surrounded by all this talent and having a little bit less offensive pressure has been good for him, and the more limited minutes. But he's been awesome. I feel like there was some hype around him at the beginning, and then people kind of got used to what he's been doing on both ends. So I would say LeBron, Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday to me is just an obvious guard just because of his experience at the Olympic level and just the way that he's just going to make a winning play down the stretch. Let me think. Oh, Kevin Durant, he literally just became the all-time USA basketball scorer. That was kind of an underrated achievement. I
He
feel
just
like
kind of did it. Yeah.
I know. Like he didn't even really acknowledge it. It's a pretty amazing statistic that he got. I mean, I guess they probably hyped it more when he became the all-time men's scorer. And so this was probably a little bit less exciting for the broader society, but I thought that was a really cool feat. So Kevin Durant, LeBron, Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday, maybe Devin Booker is your fifth because I feel like he's kind of that perfect like floor spacer at this point. So I'm sending Steph Curry to the bench, and you know that's my all-time,
I'm too.
one of my all-time favorite players. So it hurts for me to
Yeah.
say.
That's painful for you. I was thinking, you know what I thought today, and I thought of you. When Derek White took that half court shot, I'm like, why don't they just have Pritchard on the team to take half court shots? Like they could just employ him to take half court shots. Maybe they will down the line because like genuinely they should just bring him on to hit half quarters at this point.
Well, honestly though, I've been watching 3-on-3 because I've been covering women's 3-on-3 for SB Nation. Have you watched any 3-on-3? Like, do you know how it works?
I watched the last game briefly because I was at my friend's house and we just had it on. It's just super weird because you have to bring the ball out after a rebound and you have to like protect the ball. It's such a weirdly different sport. And I know everyone's like complaining about NBA players. NBA players can't play because I think they have a rule where you have to play in. Did you tell me this? You told me this, right?
Yeah.
You have to play in 3v3 events. Yeah, I'm just copying what you told me.
You have to play in 3-on-3 events, but you don't think Pritchard would be down if they told them like go play in some 3-on-3 events?
Yeah,
and then you can run your own 3v3 team at the Olympics. It's been it's besides the point, but as a big Pritchard advocate and as someone who I love 3-on-3 just because I love playing 3-on-3, so getting to see it as an Olympic sport I feel like is so cool. Because I hate fast breaks. I'm so bad in transition. So it's just fun to watch 3-on-3. And then it moves so quickly. Like from a coverage standpoint, you're watching a 10-minute game. I'm trying to take notes, and while I'm taking like my first note, the game's over. But I think Peyton Pritchard, totally off topic, but I think he would be perfect if they got him the points. I bet the Celtics would let him go a little bit, go play some FIBA games. You miss a game here and there, like 2 games all year probably would overlap. And then he can be an Olympian because they didn't even medal. They didn't even make the semifinals. And they have a bunch of guys that are like just kind of random guys. Somebody is in the Pistons front office, I think, is on the 3-on-3 team. So it's a pretty weird mix.
Yeah, it's such an intriguing team. It's just Jimmer. It's just that's who everyone knows. It's just Jimmer time.
So he didn't even play. Yeah, that was the thing. But okay, we can wrap it up here. I think there wasn't too much from this particular game just because it was probably as dominant as it gets. Probably the biggest talent disparity you could have had between two teams in this quarterfinals. We'll have post-game coverage after the U.S. Serbia game on Thursday, I believe, right? Do we have a time for that yet, or is that still in flux?
Let me take a look. USA versus Serbia basketball. I can tell you. Let me hit a Google real quick.
They're playing. US Serbia is at 3:00 on Thursday, and France Germany is at 11:30 a.m. on Thursday as well. And then if the US wins that game, they'll play in the gold medal game, which is Saturday afternoon. If they lose, they'll play in the bronze medal game, which is at 5 a.m. on Saturday. That's brutal. 5 a.m. on Saturday.
Please don't lose. I can't do that.
Well, I'm locking into the bronze medal game regardless. I love Olympic
God.
basketball.
I might be awake still then. I don't think I'm gonna wake up for that. I might just not sleep.
Well, Jack, thank you for joining. Is this your first Garden Report episode?
This is my first Garden Report. Yes, never been on the Garden
Report. It's my first time hosting. I have to say, there was a lot of.
How was it?
To overcome. It was tough, honestly. I think I like answering questions better than asking them. But I'm gonna learn. So thanks everybody for tuning in. It's always fun to be able to recap these games, and appreciate you guys chiming again. I'm seeing a lot of. I feel like the Tatum discourse in the chat has been never ending.
No one hates Jason Tatum more than Celtics fans.
I don't think it's hate. I think it's just maybe like obsession, just because he is who he is, that he's always going to dominate the discourse. Like, I try to bring up Drew Holiday and Derek White, people, they don't want to talk about him, you know? But again, I think it's the bottom line is, I've said this a bunch of times, but I feel like at the end of the day, the really cool thing here is that we're getting to watch the Celtics players in the Olympics 2 months after they won the championship. Like, I feel like that should not get lost in the discourse around like people's shooting lines or things. Like, just the fact that you have that opportunity as a Celtics fan, I feel like that's a pretty good place to be. Just not too long after championship, and it's looking like those guys will most likely also win gold medals. But with that, we'll be back on Thursday to cover the Serbia-US game. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and have a great rest of your week.